welcome to The Art of Being Human. We already started last segment talking about cognitive dysfunction. It is kind of a difficult word to say, but it has to do with your thinking process. Cognitive means mind, how you think. And there are several dysfunctions that people fall into when their thinking is not quite right, not quite accurate, or difficult for them to handle, because it doesn't make you very happy if you think everything is good or everything is bad and there's no in between. So we went into that all or nothing thinking, which is the first one. Now we're ready for the second one, and this is called overgeneralization. Now, what this means is that you think because something has happened to you, it's going to happen over and over and over again. It's like you're always waiting for that second shoe to drop. It happened before, it'll happen again. To give you some examples, you went to the doctor and you had a little lump on your face. It was a basal carcinoma. Basal carcinoma is a very slow-growing cancer, and most people who have it, they can keep up with it and live for years and years, because if they don't ignore it and the doctor takes it off as it comes, then it's gone. And some people really do have problems, and they have to keep on having a little carcinoma here, a little carcinoma there, taken out. We're not talking about a fast-growing cancer. We're talking about something that's slow-growing, and it can be kept up with. Now, if you have something like that, you're thinking all the time, every bump, every scratch, every bruise, it must be a form of cancer. You know, I had this cancer once. They took it off. They said it might grow back. It hasn't grown back there, but I got another little scratch over here. Maybe that's a cancer too. Now, I've worked with people like that who said that in the past they had cancer and they beat it out. But now they're afraid of every little mark on their body that it might be coming back. And if that's the case, they're going to die. Well, not necessarily, and it might not be cancer to begin with, but their whole life is predicated on the fact that what has happened before will happen again. You went to school and you flunked out. And then now you're going to school, what are you fearful of? I'm going to flunk out. Well, maybe the courses are all different, the circumstances are all different, the college is all different, and it's not a given that you're going to flunk out because you did it before. Now, I do know people that have flunked out, but they were people who should not have been in college to begin with. You can get involved in a program that's too advanced for you, or you can get involved in a program that just doesn't seem right for you. And instead of saying, I'm going to flunk, I'm going to flunk, I'm going to flunk, you know, it's a case of, this is something I can do. This is different. This is not the same as it was before. I can understand, however, the temptation that you have to think in an overgeneralized way. Because if you have gone through something and it's been difficult, anything that's similar will bring up a memory of what that was. And you relive your memories as if they were present, even though they're past. One thing you have to understand about anxiety. In anxiety, you bring back things that have happened to you in the past that are long ago taken care of, but when you're in a certain situation that's similar, you may remember those things, and instead of saying, well, that was the past, this is different, you relive it as if it's a present reality. So if I'm to kind of summarize this, something happened to you in the past, you got over it, or you thought you got over it, and something similar happens in the present. Now the past is brought up. You're reliving your past as if it is in the present, even though it's long ago gone. And what happens is that you experience the same emotions that you did when you experienced it the first time. This gets a little bit complicated, but this is why psychology gets a little bit complicated. People who have problems that have not been resolved, but they think they've been resolved because they're not dealing with those particular problems anymore. So as far as they're concerned, they're all resolved. But if they're not resolved, they're still hiding somewhere. Then you can go through a problem that's similar, bring that old problem up, and relive it like it was fresh. undergoing the same personality problems, undergoing the same kinds of anxieties and depression you had at the time that you were working with it originally. It's like you're reliving your past fears, and it comes up again. The beauty of getting counseling when you need it is the fact that if you get it resolved, and it really truly is resolved, not just hidden, not just pushed down because you're thinking about something else, if it truly is resolved, you can remember it and it doesn't haunt you anymore. It just doesn't. You may remember something that happened to you that was difficult, but now it's over and done with. It's still over and done with. And because you're going through something else doesn't mean that is repeating itself. But in overgeneralization, of the way that you're thinking that something that happened in the past is going to repeat itself. You know, you climbed up a ladder and you fell off and you broke your leg. Are you forever going to be afraid of ladders? Every time you see a ladder, if I climb that ladder, I'm going to fall off and I'm going to break my leg. I can't have anything to do with ladders anymore. And you can actually develop a phobia. Bring a ladder out, I'm scared. I know people that are afraid of going across bridges, and it's not like anything that's happened to them when they've gone through bridges before or over bridges before, but they're afraid of bridges. It reminds them of something that's happened to them in the past. They don't know what it is, but they just know something they can't handle is bridges. So sometimes you have to desensitize people like this. And you might have, a doctor might tell you, a psychiatrist, a psychologist might say, go out and get some pictures of bridges and look at them. That may be enough to cause people to go into a panic, just looking at a picture of a bridge. But as they look at that picture of the bridge over and over and over again, it's not quite so scary. Then they might have to go to a place where there is a bridge, park, like maybe a park or something, and look at the bridge, the real bridge. Oh, that's awful. I'll never be able to get over that. That's a real bridge. I'm scared. All right, then you take the next step. You go and just edge up toward the bridge. You walk, if there's a walkway, some of the bridges have walkways, and you walk up to the bridge, and you do a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and then finally you take the plunge, and you just walk over that bridge or drive over that bridge, and you found nothing bad happened. You're able to get over it fine. You may have been sweating and crying and thinking, this is awful, I'll never be able to do it. The nerves may have been tight. You may have thought, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, I can't handle this. But the fact is, you did it. And now, over a period of time, in doing experiences with bridges, you find out you're not afraid of the bridges anymore. But when something happened to you in the past, something happened around a bridge, on a bridge, or reminded you of a bridge, or something happened, you transferred that fear onto bridges, and you had developed a phobic reaction of a bridge. What about flying? Some people are terrified to fly. They're just so scared. What are they scared of? Well, something might happen. The plane might go down. I've had close calls in airplanes, but I found them fascinating. I was in a plane that was flying, and a guy was sitting beside me, and he nudged me. You know, I was on the window seat, but he was on the aisle seat, and he said, take a look at this. And I looked, and the airplane that we were in, the wingtip was practically touching the wingtip of another plane. I mean, you could almost jump from one plane wing to the other plane wing. And I wasn't afraid, but boy, I tell you, we separated from that plane. I don't know which plane left, but either we left or they left, because suddenly there was a lot of space between us. But sometimes you get into something like that. But if you have a fear of a plane, that would send you into a brutal panic. So overgeneralization, what has happened to you before will happen again, time and time and time again. And it can become like a phobic reaction, or it can be just an anxiety reaction where you get close to what is happening. You went to school, you flunked out, you're afraid to go back to school. It could be any situation. I know I think more academically because of being a professor, but I dealt with a lot of students that had fears like this. And we did desensitize them, and it did help them a lot. So it's something you can get over. So here's another example. A man asks a girl for a date, and she politely refuses. It may be that she has something else scheduled, and that's probably what she tells her. I'm sorry, but I'm booked up that day. I can't go out with you that day. And what does he do? If he has an overgeneralized response, I'll never be able to go on a date with a girl. Everybody will refuse me. There's no chance for me to ever have a friendship with a girl. If I ask, I know I'm going to be refused. This is a very extreme kind of overgeneralization. I'm doing something, I'm trying to do something, I'm refused, it doesn't work out, I'll never do it again because I'll never be able to do it. I'll never be successful. It's almost a little bit, it's almost like the all or nothing kind of thinking, but what he's saying is any time that I ask a girl, she's bound to refuse, because one refuse, they all will. And they all will, not only just today, tomorrow, but forever. So therefore, I have nothing. I will never be able to have a relationship with a girl. It's this kind of thinking is very, very self-defeating. Because you never give yourself a chance to be a success at something, because you're so afraid that whatever happened before is going to happen again, that you will never do it. You'll try not to do it. It'll put you in a state of fear to do it. And what you're thinking is, I'm not going to have success anyway. Why try? There may be anxiety with it, there may not, but your thinking is a fact. Your perception is everything. What you think, you believe. What you perceive, you believe as being truth. Now, the problem is, if you have these kinds of thinking that I'm discussing, it's not truth, but you think it is. If you believe that what you're thinking is truth, you're not going to be willing to change your thinking because you already know the truth, except what you think of the truth may not actually be the truth. It may be just a disordered thought. And you can't get past it because it's a disordered thought. So if you're a kind of person that is thinking, well, I tried this and it didn't work, so I'll never do it again, well, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But it's not a given that you're going to fail or have a bad experience every time you try something similar. You think you might, and that's where your fear comes in. And you believe that fear is truth. This is what you have to understand. What you believe in, what you think, is your own personal truth. But your own personal truth may not be truth. It may just be disordered thinking. This is why I think it's so important to bring this up, in case I have listeners or watchers out here who feel that if they do this kind of thinking, so they keep themselves from a full life because they really believe it's not going to work for them. So that was the second one. The third one is a mental filter. A mental filter is when you pick out a negative detail in a situation and dwell on it, and all you think is the negative. Something happened. Suppose you gave a speech. You forgot part of something. You left a sentence out, or you left a line out, or you didn't quite complete a thought. You went on to something else you thought too soon. The rest of the speech was fine. First of all, probably nobody noticed, but if they did notice, so what? We're human. But you think all the time about that sentence you left out, or say you were in a play and you memorized your lines for this play and you knew them well, but when you got on the stage, you're a little stage fright. And having a problem with stage fright, you left some critical words out of a sentence that you had to say as a character in the play. Now, even though the play was wonderful, it got good reviews, everybody said you did a great job, everybody loved it, all you can think about is those few words you left out. I'm a failure. I left out those words. I shouldn't have left out those words. I got scared. I can never be in a play again because I got scared and I left out the word. So you take a test, you get 3 wrong out of 100. That's not bad. That means you got over 90 right if it was a 100-unit test, but all you can think of is the fact that you got 3 wrong. And that means, what does that lead to? I'll never be a success. I can't take tests because every time I take tests, I get 2 or 3 wrong. I never get a good test. I'm never going to be a success in life. I'm a failure. Now, I know I'm exaggerating, but this is the way they think. This is the way people think. So you go from one thing to another thing to another thing. I got 3 wrong on the test. If I take the test again, I might get 4 or 5 wrong. And what's going to happen? Well, I'm going to just be a total failure. I'm going to be a total failure because I'll never get a perfect score. And if I don't have a good perfect score, my scores will be lower. That means I won't be successful. That means I can't take tests. And on and on and on it goes. But the thing is, it destroys your self-concept about yourself. You have to be careful. And while I'm at it, I haven't finished with this yet, but I want to mention about bright children because I think it's important. We do have any numbers of bright children that commit suicide. Why, if they're so bright and they're popular and they're good in sports, they're good in their classes, they appear to have everything to live for, why would they have depression? And why would they, some of them, kill themselves from that depression? Well, the reason is this. They think that everybody is expecting them to be perfect. Their grades are really high. They get all A's in their grades. They do wonderful in everything they do. So people get to expect them to be great in everything. And if they ever miss on something and they don't do as well, they tend to feel of themselves as total failures because they couldn't keep up to the expectations that people have of them. People have the expectations, parents and others, my child is so creative, my child is so intelligent, he's going to do so well. And they're living in terror that maybe they can't do as well. Maybe their success is kind of like a fluke. Maybe they're going to make a major mistake sometime. Then all of their dreams and hopes will come crashing down and they will discover that they're not the people that other people thought they were. Now, you got to remember for self-concept. Self-concept is not so much what you feel about yourself, but what you feel other people feel about you. And if a child who is bright is afraid that they're going to disappoint other people who believe in him to do everything right, and he's going to miss somehow and not do everything right, then he's going to be utterly crushed from the disappointment that he feels that he has caused these other people who believe in him. I hope you get my drift. I think if you have a bright child and they do wonderful, that's great. Encourage them. But also let them know that if for some reason something happens and every test isn't an A, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean you're any less of a person. It means that you're a 100% human being. Everybody has their good days. Everybody has certain days when maybe they're not so good. You don't have to be perfect all the time to be a good human being. You don't have to be perfect all the time to have our love and our care and our support. We are proud of you as a person. And if sometime that test turns out to be an 80 instead of 100, so what? You know, don't allow a child to feel that they have to do everything perfect all the time, or else they're a failure, because that will lead to depression, because they're afraid of disappointing the people who believe in them the most. And that causes them to feel that they're a negative person, not a positive one. It causes them to have a negative self-concept. And then if they discover they're not who they think they are all the time, then they can become very depressed over that, because they feel they've disappointed everybody. And if they've disappointed everybody and get depressed, well, then what does that lead to? I've got to punish myself. I'm not a good person. They believed in me and I failed them. And a child, you know, a teenager, their emotions aren't stable. They can't be. They're growing still. The brain is still developing, and they cannot understand. I mean, either they're good or they're bad. That's the all or nothing thinking. If they have all or nothing thinking, I'm good or I'm bad, only now I'm bad because I failed, I disappointed everybody, they can go into a deep depression, and some of them can commit suicide. So I just wanted to bring that up to you, that if you're raising a bright child, tell them their humanness is just as important as their grades. And I'm not saying you give them an excuse to slough off on their work, not at all. But if something happens and they do miss something, then they're just as much a human as they ever were. They have to understand that in order to protect them from depression. And I'm talking about any child who has a lot of brilliance, who has a lot of intelligence, being fearful of disappointing those who do believe in them because they know their potential, and then they feel bad because they've missed. We have to stabilize things here for children, and teenagers are still children. You know, your brain doesn't develop fully until at least your mid-20s. When you're 15, 16 years old, you're not an adult. You are getting there, but you're not an adult. Your brain hasn't developed to its full potential yet. That takes until mid-20s to do that. And you can misperceive very easily as to who you are and what your worth is if your brain hasn't developed enough to be able to understand it. And a teenage brain is not going to understand it. This is where parents come in. You help them to understand their worth and their importance, and help them to understand that their lives are important, and if they're not perfect all the time, so what? Neither is anybody else. Well, I'm running out of time, so I guess I'm not a perfect person. I misjudged my time, too. So I'll close it here. We're going to continue with this until we finish. So, and I may bring some other things, because I am going to be gone a week or two here or there, so I may have a repeat here or there, but we're going to continue with this until we finish. So we'll close it here, and please join me next time.